Hello everyone, this is Greg Fenn, Camel River Guide Service, usually on Lake Sam Rayburn in beautiful East Texas, but today it's raining and I'm just kind of sitting back and taking it easy. But I decided to talk to you for a little bit with this week's episode on what kind of equipment to use to effectively catch crappie. As you know, with all my YouTubes, I get a lot of response, and there's a lot of people who want to start fishing for the first time crappie, and some that have been fishing a long time. But I'm always getting, what kind of rod are you using? What kind of reel are you using? What kind of jigs are those? And so I just decided I'd just go ahead and share a video explaining all of that today. So we'll start with rods. Now, as a guide, I don't use $200 rods because I have people in the boat sometimes for the first time. So I use good quality rods, but I don't use expensive rods. Now, besides rods and reels, I'm going to make a little disclaimer right at first. Nobody pays me anything. I'm not sponsored by anybody. All these products that I'm going to show you today is what I use, and I don't get paid by anybody to advertise them. It's just what I use, and they're pretty effective. Every year, this boat brings in 5,000 to 7,000 crappie, because of my guide service. And so I know what works for me here on Lake Sam Rayburn. Now, you'll change a little bit as you move to different lakes, but I want to show you what I do. First, with rods, and I normally get these rods either on Amazon or at Academy. I think Walmart has them too. And I've never met this man named Mr. Crappie, Wally Marshall. I'd like to. He's won a lot of championship crappie tournaments, but this has got his name on it, Mr. Crappie. This is a 9-foot, 2-piece, what they call a slab daddy, and it's a light action rod, 9 feet long, and I really like using it myself. It just has a good feel. A lot of times I'm fishing those brush piles and the fish will actually get down in the brush pile. This has got a little backbone to pull them on out, but it also is just fun to catch fish on, because I have a lot of people that fish with me and they say, man, I love these long rods. It makes the action a lot more fun. Now, I don't use the reel that they come on. I put my own reel on here, and the reel I've chosen is an open face Mitchell 310. And they're durable, they last and last and last. And they're inexpensive also, but they're a very high quality reel. Mitchell's been around a long time. I was using Mitchell reels when I was a little boy. So I really like using these reels. So that's the rod reel combination that I use for, especially if I'm on a float fish or if I'm going to straight line fish down with minnows or with jigs. The line I usually put on these is 20-pound Power Pro braid, which has a 6-pound diameter. So it's a small diameter line, but it's strong. And that way, if you get down to brush piles and you jerk your jig out of it, or you get that hook back out, it won't break the line usually. It may straighten out the hook a little bit, and you take your pliers and you bend it back into shape. But I like using Power Pro, especially the 20-pound test, moss green, 6-pound diameter. Works real well. The other lines I use, again, is the Mr. Crappie line. Sometimes I use 6-pound, and you'll see the high visibility line. And sometimes, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later on, why I use that. And then I also use the 6-pound Mr. Crappie clear. These are very inexpensive. You can get them at Walmart, Academy, different places, and you're not spending a lot of money, but they hold up really well. They hold good. The line doesn't break. For 6-pound. You can put some 2-pound crappie in the boat with this very easily. And so those are the 3 lines that I normally use depending upon the conditions. When I'm minnow fishing with a float, or what we used to call a cork, the cork that I use is a thrill cork. And these, again, you can get these at Academy. I like them because they stand straight up, but they also have a very narrow place for the line to go through. And so the reason for that is because I use bopper stoppers to set my float. And you've seen me use these on other videos. I have this one already rigged up, and so you can see I have the hook here, I have a weight. This float will move up and down until it hits that bopper stopper. See, it hit that bopper stopper? And so that bopper stopper, I can, once I put that on line, I can slide that to any depth I want. 5 feet, 6 feet, 13 feet, 25 feet, whatever I want to put it on. I'll set that when I throw that minnow out there, that cork will go all the way up, hit that bopper stopper and stop. It's critical, and I've brought this up time and time again on videos, that you fish just above the fish. So locate your fish on the graph, find out what depth they are. Let's just say they're 12 feet deep. Set that bopper stopper, and a lot of times you can use actually the rod as you're measuring. You know this is a 9 feet rod, so if you want to go 11 feet, just go 9 plus 2. Set your bopper stopper and start fishing. And that cork or that float will go right up that bopper stopper and stop. And you know you're within 3 or 4 inches of where those fish are feeding. As far as the hooks, I use the Gold Eagle Claw Aberdeen 1/0 hook when I'm minnow fishing. You can buy me anywhere. Eagle Claw's been around for years and years. On the weights, I use a little bit heavier split shot weight. These are a number 4. Let me pull one out so you can see what I'm talking about. I don't like a lightweight because I want that minnow to get down as fast as possible so I can start fishing it. So this is a number 4 weight. You can see that right there, how that works. Put it on the line and crimp it. And what I like about this is if you ever want to take it off, you just take your needle nose pliers and pinch that back open again, and it'll open it back up to get your line back, and you can reuse these weights over and over. So that's it on minnow fishing with a float. We have the hook, we have the weight, we have a thrill float that slides up and down and hits against the bopper stopper, and that's all you need. On this one, I normally use braid. Now, if I was going to be up somewhere in those Arkansas clear waters, I'd probably go with a 6-pound Mr. Crappie clear line. So, but down here, we have the water's a little bit off color, sometimes murky, sometimes muddy. So this braid is fine. And I catch just as many on it as anybody does. Now, that's what I do if I'm minnow fishing. Now sometimes I'll minnow fish just straight down with no float. Well, then you just take the cork off. But everything else stays the same. I still use the bopper stopper to figure out what my depth is. So if I'm going to fish 12 feet deep, I take that bopper stopper and I dance it right there on top of the water, and I'll jig it a little bit, bam. And that's when I get right over the top of the fish. That's the rod I use for that. Sometimes when I'm jig fishing, I use the same rod. This is the same Mr. Crappie Slab Daddy rod that I showed you before. This is just another one of them. I got a bunch of these. And this is a jig that I have on this one here. And sometimes, now I'm going to get into the kind of jigs I use, but again, I'm using braid on this. So these are 2 setups I use when I'm fishing either with a float or I'm fishing directly straight up and down over the top of crappie. Now, let me show you another rod I use. These are basically the only 2 rods I use. This little rod here also has Wally Marshall's name on it. It's called a Signature Series. It's a Im6 Graphite Rod. It's actually made by Lew's. And this is a light action rod, and this is a 7-foot rod. I love it for the money. Oh, you can go out and buy a $100, $150 rod, but these rods for the money, I'm telling you, they're awesome. Where I usually use these rods more than anything putting braid or the light line on is when I put a jig on and I cast it and to the brush pile where I have the brush pile set up. I cast it to it and I'll count it down 1, 2, 3, 4. Every time I do one of those 1, 2, 3, 4s, that drops about a foot with the kind of jig I'm using. Now, if I'm using a little heavier jig, then you know it's going to drop a little quicker. But I like to count it down. If I want to fish 8 feet deep, I'm going to count to 7 or 8 and then start reeling back real slow. And when I'm reeling back slow, I'll feel that brush. That's what you want to do. You want to feel that brush and just kind of bump it through the brush, bump it through the brush. But when you bump it through that brush, then let that jig fall. 9 times out of 10, a crappie, bass, or anything else is going to hit a bait on the fall, because they think it's like a wounded shad or a wounded minnow or something that's dying. And that's when they're going to attack it. They're programmed instinctively to do that. It's in their DNA. So when you bring it to that brush pile, don't just reel fast. Get out there and get it down. If you didn't feel no brush and you didn't count down enough, throw it on back out there, count it down, be patient, and figure out where you bring it across that brush. Now start bringing it across real slow. You get a little hang up, just pop it loose and let it fall. Bring in some more, go over the next one, pop, and you'll feel that tick. You feel that tick? Just sit back firm. Don't jerk it like you would a bass. Remember, a lot of people call these paper mouth fish. They're these crappie or these sacalets. So just gently pull back and start reeling. The other thing too is I see people a lot of time when I'm guiding, they reel like this. You want to get out of that habit, because when you're doing that, you're giving the fish slack and they'll get off. So just hold your rod steady and use your and these are reversible reels, by the way, right-handed or left-handed. But just bring it on steady. Let the rod on the boat, don't into the boat. Don't let them have any slack. Now let me talk to you about jigs. I fished all kinds of jigs from all sorts of people. I have people come to me and say they make jigs, try my jig. I ran across a jig about 1.5 years ago. Is the hands down best jig I've ever seen in my life. It's a jig made over there in Arkansas by a man named Tim Cumbie, and the name of the company, and I'm going to put it on the screen for you, is Timmy Tom's Jig Company, I think, .com. I'm going to put it on the screen so that you'll see it. Go to that jig company. It's the beatenest jig I've ever seen in my life. I buy from him 16-ounce jigs, and I buy 1/8-ounce jigs. Now, since this is a little bit bigger, I'm going to show you it. And I buy them in different colors. This guy will customize your jig head any color you want it. And he has different colors, but even if you want a different color, he'll customize it. And look at the eyes on that thing. You're talking about realistic. It's unbelievable. He puts a spinner on these jigs, which I like, but more importantly, he puts that brush guard. I can fish down there in those brush piles. You see me call them hotels, and I can get that thing down and work in amongst that brush and not get hung up. It is just absolutely awesome. When I first saw it, I thought, well, I'm going to lose too many fish. That brush pile is going to keep me from catching a bunch of fish. I'm telling you, I have never lost a fish because of this brush guard. It's helped me catch thousands of fish. The one thing you need to know, though, is when you get one out of a package, you need to trim it, because you can see it goes way too far past the hook. And by the way, these hooks, you can put any kind of hook you want to on them. I choose this hook, and it's in the color of red. What you want to do is kind of take your fingers and fan that out just a little bit, and take you a pair of scissors, and you see this shaft right here? That's how you want to cut it. You want to cut these up, but these last few strands you want to barely cover over the top of that hook. So if I cut that just about like that right there, that's what I like to do it right there. You see how I did that? It's cut at an angle, and just the last 1 or 2 strands is keeping that from hanging up. That is a fish catching jig. I'm here to tell you, trust it. fish it anywhere. This jig, according to their websites and other information I've seen, has won several tournaments throughout the United States. Now, I don't tournament fish, I guide, but this is a go-to jig for me all the time. It's the jig I like to use. Now, as far as bodies on this jig, I use plastic bodies. There's several that I like, and I depend upon what I do. I like the Bobby Garland Baby Shad in Pearl. Strike King makes one that's working for me real well right now. It's the 1 3/4 inch Crappie Thunder in refrigerator white. Real bright white with a chartreuse tail. I'll show you that one in just a minute. And another company that makes awesome bodies is a company called Bonehead. And I've started using them a lot too. This is the Smoking Shad Bonehead jig, and it's 2 inch. But man, you talking about colors. I mean, look at the colors that they have. And so you can use the same jig, but you could just change bodies out. And if one's not working for you, use another one. Pink is a hot color on Lake Sam Rayburn. I tell you who told me that years ago. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but it was Lonnie Stanley, who's more into bass, but he's an awesome jig maker over there in Huntington, Texas, and we've known him for years. But he told me a few years back, he said pink head is a crappie killer anywhere you want to go on Rayburn. So I started using pink heads, but doing different things with them. And so, for example, let me show you. I take this. One of the things that works for me real well, especially in the summertime, I take this Bobby Garland, and you can see, man, that's got a lot of action on that tail. I take that Bobby Garland, this is the way I rig it, and run it on up there about 3/4 of an inch, turn it out, and then that's what you got right there. Let me see if I can't get that around there where you can see it real good. Now I do something else. Let's see, it's not all the way up there though. That's another thing about Tim's jigs. He's got a little keeper on there where you can slide that body on up there and it'll hold it. I love it. Man, that is a killer jig. And the other thing I do when I use that Bobby Garland, if I can find it. Yeah, I've got it right over here. Let me just bring it over here to myself. I don't know that this makes a lot of difference or not, but I'll take this little spike it, dip and glow, and I just pop that tail just a little bit and make a little chartreuse. That combination right there on Lake Sam Rayburn is a killer jig. Probably 6-7 months out of the year is what I use. Other times, I'll use, like right now, I'm using, because I'm fishing up the river, and the water is very, well, it's muddy right now, and a lot of times it's way off color. So I need a real bright white, and so Crappie Strike King makes this little jig here in refrigerator white, and when I put that on there, what I like about this is they got these little doohickeys down at the bottom and these little skirts. And when that dude's coming through the water, you ought to see it. Let me hold that up there where you can see it. That is a fish catching jig. Let me tell you something else about these jigs that a lot of companies don't do. Besides putting this brush guard on here, these eyes, I've never pulled one out of a package where the eye had paint in it, where I've had to take another hook or a knife or something other and poke a hole to get my line through. That's one of the marks of quality when you start looking at lures. Not just the eyes, not just the right spinner, not just the hook, not just the weed guard, but those eyes, the hook eye, or the where you put your line through, the eye of the hook, never is painted up. And how many times have you seen that? And you get out of a package and it's all painted up and you got to hunt for something to punch that paint out of there. I don't know how Tim does it, but he's very quality control in his business, and that's why I do business with him. And I buy 200 or 300 jigs, you know, a year from him, or maybe more. But I buy a quantity from him. And that's the other thing too. You tell him you want you tell him you want maybe 100, and he'll just send them to you in a bag if that's the way you want them. I mean, it's going to be the same price, but there's no sense in having a bunch of little bitty packages. He'll do whatever you want to, and he'll paint them any color you want them to, put any kind of hook you want on them. You can't beat it. So that's kind of my setup. That's what I do. I think we've kind of covered all the bases. If I'm fishing with minnows, it's either going to be with a float or straight line. I use the 9-foot crappie rods. If I'm fishing straight up and down with a jig, I use the 9-foot crappie rods. If I'm casting out and reeling it real slow, I use these 7-foot crappie rods. And all of them have Mitchell 310 reversible handle reels, and they work out real well. Now, if you have any more questions on what kind of equipment, I mean, we can go into other things like my XI5 and Lowrance and everything else. And I love my RT 188 Ranger boat, and I'll talk about them all you want to. If you have any questions, I try to answer all the questions on YouTube to you subscribers that I can. But just go to my YouTube, where you're going to see me on this one. It's just simply Greg Fenn, G-R-E-G-F-E-N-N. And I'm Camel River Guide Service down here on Lake Sam Rayburn. Now, if you want to go fishing with me, go to my website, www.camelriverguideservice.com. Like I've told everybody before, I'll take you fishing. We'll catch fish. If you want me to clean and fillet those fish for you and bag them and get them ready for your freezer, you're good to go. I have a lot of people come, well, actually from all over, but a lot of people come from Houston, and they want their fish clean. They want to take them home and put them straight in the freezer. I'd be glad to do that. I got a fish clean table, and that's what I do. But the other thing I do, and I've kind of gotten to be well known for it, is I videotape your trip. And when we're done videotaping it, I take that video home and at night or the next day, and I'll download it, and I'll edit that video into good action footage. It might be 8, 10, 15 minutes, depending upon what quality film I had. I'll make sure I don't do anything in any compromising positions or anything that's distasteful, because that's a video. I respect your family and the dignity of your household. That's something you'll be wanting to show your great-great-grandkids someday. So I want to make sure it's good quality, and it's been working out pretty well for me, because what people are doing, they're having fish fries and inviting friends over, and instead of going home, or instead of telling them, yeah, we caught crappie this big, they just plug their computer into their TV and they're watching their fishing show that they did the last Saturday or Friday, whenever they went with me, and they're showing their friends the video of them catching fish. It's awesome, and a lot of people are enjoying it. So come on out. I love to take you. It's going to be a great season. Don't wait to book, because right now the calendar this is January, and it's not filled up too much, but it's fixing to get full. Behind me, right over here, if you can see it, I don't know if you can or not, I think you can. This little cottage is a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath cottage, and it's fully rigged up to do whatever you want to do. 2 beds, it'll sleep 4. It's even got a washer and dryer in there. Whatever you need. Wi-Fi, totally rigged out, $65 a night. So if you're fishing with me, or you're preparing for a tournament, an upcoming tournament here on Lake Sam Rayburn, or fishing a tournament, come on, stay with me. You're going to be parking your boat right here on concrete driveway. We'll hook your boat up to batteries to charge them. I'll help you all I can. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video. It was a little bit of kind of the way I fish and the kind of equipment I use. And like I said, something must be working. We put about 5,000 to 7,000 crappie in this boat, and you've seen me do it on other videos. I'd like for you to keep staying tuned. I'm going to try to do a video similar to this every week. You're going to learn a lot. I might not know everything, but I am willing to share what I do know with all of y'all. So keep your line wet, get on back out there and have some fun and catch those crappie, and take your family. There's nothing like it. This is Greg Fenn, Camel River Guide Service. We'll see you next week.